Hey guys, Shalom here. Welcome to the Bin Zone. On today's video, we're going to be looking at the ending of The Mandalorian Season 1. Most specifically though, we're going to be looking at the Dark Saber that was introduced at the end. Looking at the significance of the Dark Saber for The Mandalorian and where the show can go next, and the history of the Saber itself. Guys, if you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel. We do these breakdown videos a lot, reviews as well as recaps on Star Wars, The Mandalorian, all your favorite movies and TV shows. So definitely consider subscribing. But without further ado, let's dive into the Dark Saber. Now, the Dark Saber itself is very interesting because it is something that plays a critical role in the history of both the Mandalorians as well as the Jedi. That's because the Dark Saber was created over 1,000 years ago before the story of the Mandalorian. And that was by the first ever Mandalorian to become a Jedi. Because 1,000 years ago or so, the Mandalorians had their own world called Mandalore, and they were a very proud race of warriors. However, the first Mandalorian to ever become a Jedi was such a huge thing because the Mandalorians and the Jedis were fundamentally opposed to each other throughout the reign and the thriving society of the Mandalorians. And that's because of the Mandalorians' warlike persona and their thirst for combat and to conquer the galaxy. And the Jedi were opposed to that because the Jedi symbolize peace and harmony. So those two forces were fundamentally opposed. So when we had this Mandalorian, Tar Vizsla, join the Jedi Order, to signify this, he created his own lightsaber because, you know, in order to become a Jedi Knight and Jedi Master, or a Padawan for that matter, you have to create your own lightsaber. And he created the Dark Saber, which is designed mostly based on Mandalorian type weapons. As you can see, the hilt and blade aren't like your typical lightsabers. It's more shaped like an actual sword, and that's because it represents the Mandalorian warrior way. Now, after Tar Vizsla passed, the Jedi took the Dark Saber and they kept it in the Jedi temples. That was until Tar Vizsla's descendants broke into the Jedi temple and stole the Dark Saber. And ever since that moment, the Dark Saber has meant something to the Mandalorians. It's a status, and it's meant as the ultimate form of power, the status and the pinnacle that a Mandalorian can reach. Therefore, it's representative of the Mandalorian leaders. So anyone who wields the Dark Saber for the most part is the leader of the Mandalorians, which is very interesting that Moff Gideon actually has it, because the way you lead the Mandalorians is by wielding the Dark Saber. But you can't just steal it from somebody and become leader of the Mandalorians. You have to defeat them in combat and take the Dark Saber. And if you guys have seen Clone Wars or Rebels, for the most part, they dive deep into the history of the Mandalorian, Dark Saber, and the importance of it, because Darth Maul at one point had the Dark Saber and he was trying to become the leader of the Mandalorians because, again, it represents leadership. And as you can see, the Mandalorians evolved from a race of warrior-like creatures, and instead of being a species or a race, the Mandalorians now go by a creed. So therefore, any species or race can be a Mandalorian, such as Mando, the main character of the series Mandalorian. He's not born a Mandalorian. He was a founding, but he was raised in that creed, in that code, so therefore he is Mandalorian. But now that the Dark Saber itself has appeared in Moff Gideon's hands, we know that the Mandalorian knows who Moff is and Moff knows who he is. So the fact that he has the Dark Saber and he was on Mandalore during a ransacking of the planet, so it shows that he was there, probably defeated or stole the Dark Saber from the leaders of the Mandalorians at the time, and therefore he has the key to being the ruler of the Mandalorians. And it's very interesting that this season of The Mandalorian has the Mandalorians scattered out throughout different worlds, and they're essentially in hiding post-Empire because they've been ravaged by the Empire. And as you can see now, the Mandalorian has Beskar armor. He has the ancient armor of the Mandalorians. So if somehow he were to get the Dark Saber from Moff Gideon, he would be representative of the leader of the Mandalorians. And that's pretty much where the show is going with this Dark Saber. The fact that they showed us the Dark Saber at the very end of the last episode of The Mandalorian Season 1, they're setting up a future storyline in which the two characters are going to come into conflict. And if the Mandalorian can defeat Moff Gideon and take the Dark Saber, he will truly become the leader of the Mandalorians. And that's what the show is leading up to. The show is titled The Mandalorian. So he is the Mandalorian, and he will become the one who leads them all, because now he has his own founding that he's raising as a Mandalorian in Baby Yoda, and now he has his adversary that has the Dark Saber, and now he has Beskar armor and he has a jetpack. So as we saw this season, as he went on this season, he became more Mandalorian-esque. He got better armor, the Beskar. He got the jetpack. He has now a founding under his care. He has a sigil. Now the Darksaber is within reach. So the Darksaber, the representation of all power for the Mandalorians, is within his reach. And essentially, that power puts him on par with the Jedi, who in this universe, or the Sith too, in this universe, are the pinnacles of power. And they use lightsabers for combat. So therefore, a Mandalorian with a Darksaber can engage in combat with them using a similar weapon, but while not having the Force. You saw the Mandalorian armor, you saw all the weaponry it has. They have other things to offset that, and that's what made Mandalorians truly formidable, is the fact that despite not having the Force, their armor and their weaponry are top notch, and that gives them an ability to actually fight Jedi and Sith on a somewhat even playing ground. You throw in the Darksaber, and it's completely even grounds. So I'm curious to see where it goes, but overall, the Darksaber itself, the blade itself, it's the representation of the Mandalorian and the leadership of the Mandalorians, and that's the only thing that could unite all the scattered Mandalorians throughout the galaxy under one ruler to reestablish the Mandalorian Empire. So I'm curious to see where they go in the second season. Anyway, guys, that's my breakdown of the Darksaber and the season finale of The Mandalorian. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, guys. And if you like what we do here, if you're new, consider subscribing, hit that thumbs up button. And we just started a Patreon, so consider supporting us on Patreon. We would greatly appreciate that, and it would give us way more time, and it would help us greatly in creating more content. But guys, until next time, binge on.